and we continue our series, The Beautiful Attitude. We're on part 3, blessing number 2, Jesus beginning his Sermon on the Mount, of course, in Matthew chapter 5. We're going to look at each of these Beatitudes. Of course, they apply to us as we read them in our practical daily lives, but there is something deeper, very spiritual and very important beneath them as they initially read, and it is important that we look at that and understand them to that greater depth. So blessing number 2 is to the mourners, or the promise of comfort. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Matthew chapter 5 and in verse 4. Now, when we think mourning, we think death. When we think mourners, we think funeral. Of course, they're true. These thoughts are very true, and there is no doubt that God, like any father, reaching out desperately, trying to comfort his children who mourn, or indeed any of his children who are finding themselves in any kind of stressful or anxious set of circumstances, these are applicable and very, very true. In that thought, though, there is again a deeper meaning behind this thought of mourning. Who doesn't mourn the state of the world in some way, for instance? At some point in your life, who doesn't? Who doesn't look at war-torn lands, for example? Who doesn't mourn the state that the world is in? Countries devastated by drought or famine, adverts on the television. We see little children suffering severe malnutrition, of course, and very topical in today's world. And in the news, we have racial hatred, and it goes across the whole spectrum, in my view. Violence, it goes on and on, of course. Who doesn't see just one of these things and mourn for humanity? We try as highly intelligent, extremely sophisticated beings to repair a broken world. It seems that we only manage to make it worse so often as we put our agendas and our standards and our morals and apply them to things. We try to do it by our own understanding. We try to do it using our own clever schemes, don't we? Our own idea of what equality is, and inevitably our own agendas will then take over. In the garden, way back then, humanity was set up in paradise, at one, at perfect peace with God. And we began this process of decay and destruction by sinning. That is, creating a separation between ourselves and God. How did we do that? Ignoring his loving instructions, which was clearly for our own benefit, and the cycle began. Satan comes between we and God. He convinces us, he convinces us that we can. He convinces us that we could. He convinces us that we should, and we hear his voice over God's too often. It's always been, it always will be our sinful nature that causes pain and destruction. It will always be our sinful nature, our sinful desires that brings death to the spiritual life which God gave, which God continues to offer. And that's why Jesus says that we must be born again into a new life, free from the sinful ways of humanity, back at one, back at peace with God, free from the destructive ways of the selfish nature. When we realize these things, when we accept this call to a new life, then we can see the error of humanity, the pain that we cause by our own foolishness. It is then that we can truly mourn. Mourn for those living an empty existence without the risen Jesus, the Holy Spirit in their lives, connecting them back to God and being interconnected or being one with God. Then we know the true comfort of God's love. The comfort of knowing that we are free from that existence. The comfort of knowing we have a new life here and forever in eternity with Him as He intended it to be. The comfort of knowing that if He saved us, He can save others as well. The comfort of knowing there is hope. The book of Acts in chapter 5 says, "During the night an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. 'Go, stand in the temple courts,' he said, 'and tell the people all about this new life.'" True mourning comes from this new life. Mourning through death. From this comes true comfort from the one and only true God. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. I've often said at funerals, when we are celebrating the life of someone, saying goodbye to someone who we know was truly at peace and at one with God and is going to that greater, better place, going to the glory of paradise and eternity. Mourning is an important part of our process, but we mourn for us because of the space, the gap that's left, the way that we miss those who have gone and departed, but they have gone to glory, and we celebrate that. So there is something deeper in this mourning than simply just the thought of death and funerals as we think about it on the surface. So here is my poem for this. It is "Comfort of the Father's Love." Such pain and sorrow all around me I see. So often I wonder, how can this be? A God of love, could this be His plan? War and strife, such pain to man? I do not believe it. Surely not. I think as He looks, God is truly distraught. Great plans that He had in His glory above for all of His children to share in His love. Like any good parent, He wants us to live, to love one another, to share and to give in His great love. He gave free will to choose, and so we got busy with selfish abuse. So great yet still was our Father's love. He spanned space and time to come down from above, not to chastise, not to rebuke, but to save our poor souls. His own life He forsook. So when times are tough, when storms roll on in, remember the cause of all trouble is sin. Turn from it all, and when you mourn for this mess, remember God's comfort and love is endless.